Keeping reptiles, especially bearded dragons, can be extremely expensive, so we're going to show you how you can make a budget, really highly enriching bearded dragon setup. Now, there is some stuff that you can't scrimp on when it comes to your bearded dragon setup, things like the heating and the lighting, but we'll go through cheaper ways you can get that sort of stuff, along with all the other cheaper aspects throughout the video. First of all, let's go and have a quick look at the enclosure and say hi to Diego.
Hello, mate. You okay? How's it going, Diego? How's it going, mate? Yes. Right. Let's get his food bowl out, because it was food day yesterday. But this is his enclosure. What are you doing down there, mate? What are you doing? So, look, there we go. Full custom background, log work, everything. Just looks absolutely perfect. Really nice UV lighting. Smart little basking spot. Everything has a reason, and the enclosure is a total custom built enclosure. Let's talk about the enclosure first.
So we actually made this enclosure. It only took one sheet of 8x4 plywood, and it simply just cut it down to size. We actually bought the sheet, and they had a facility where we actually got the wood from, and they could tell us, right, what size do you want it? So I told them what size. Oof, they cut it all up. Lo and behold, it fitted together absolutely perfectly. We just screwed in all the panels together. That was it. But this enclosure actually sits on, like, at the bottom with loads of enclosures on top as well. So we needed to add a little bit of strength into this enclosure. So we added this little piece of wood here. It's just an upright piece of wood. We've got one on the back behind the background as well. And we added this flat piece going across here. Originally, this was going to be for a snake. So I didn't want the snake to be able to just push against the glass. Like, push against the glass up here and open the door. So we added this piece of glass down the bottom with this runner here. These actual runners that go across that help run the glass, they came off eBay. Really cheap. Really cheap. I'll try and leave some links down in the description down below. We added the runners all the way around this square piece and then added the glass into the top. Please note, the glass is toughened glass. You don't want to add any animal in there. It's going to whip and snap and headbutt and break the glass. So it's toughened glass. It didn't cost that much. I think I paid £6 for the bottom piece, and I think I paid £12 for both the top pieces. Once that bottom glass panel was in, we added the wood onto the top, made sure it was really snug. So I mean, that glass just doesn't move at all. Then we added the runners onto the top and done the glass doors. So this enclosure cost me less than £20 to build. Now, would you rather have a custom enclosure like that, or would you rather pay £117, which is what they're currently going for a 4-foot enclosure like this? I think this equates to around about 120 gallon enclosure. Ideally, for a 4-foot by 2-foot by 2-foot enclosure, I think I'd like something a little bit bigger and a bit better for him. So if you want to see that build come in soon, towards the middle of the year, make sure you do hit that subscribe button. I ideally would like a little bit of extra height, because I'd like to give him that extra room to climb, because he doesn't have too much in here now. And plus, bearded dragons, they're semi-arboreal, they love climbing. I don't know, maybe something 5-6 foot, maybe 3 foot tall, give him that bit of extra enrichment that they would naturally get in the wild. But while we're talking the background, let's have a look at that.
Oof. Now, this background is totally custom made. I made it myself, and again, it didn't cost me that much at all. It is, you can see it just there, polystyrene. You can see it, or styrofoam, whatever you call it. We covered it in tile grout, and then we basically painted it. Now, why did we cover it in tile grout? Because there is heat in this enclosure. Isn't there, Diego? Isn't there, mate? There's heat in there. And I didn't want the heat to melt the polystyrene. This enclosure background is best part of 4 years old, and that's the only damage we've got so far. That's it. The base just here, that's all made the same way. Exactly the same way. Now, I didn't want it just flat, so I added a bit of a bump just there. That was it. It's just capped off at the end. I did want to make, when I first initially made it, like some steps going down that side, just like these ones just here. But I don't know, we just didn't do it. I wanted a little bit of extra support, so I made that little leg just there, and that is it. We've got another support down the back corner. He goes in there to brumate. It's one of the hides that he does use. He does like to hide underneath there sometimes as well. And that's that. We do this on a lot of other builds as well. We like to build stuff into it, you know, like hygrometers, thermometers. We've got a digital one down there. We've got a digital one over there. And that just helps us to see the regulation of heat and humidity throughout the enclosures. When we do a clean out, the humidity sometimes does spike up a little bit, but that's natural. In Australia, they would naturally get thunderstorms and the humidity would naturally spike. Oh, don't you look at me in that tone of voice, woman. even though he's a man. Now, we have recently just built this big leopard gecko enclosure, and the background was built very similar to how that one was built. So if you want to see how we actually built the background, I'll leave a card just up there right now.
But the heating and lighting is something you really don't want to scrimp on when it comes to your bearded dragon.
The basis of it is they need a hot side and a cold side. So one side's got your heat and one side hasn't got heat, or if it has got heat, then it's at a lower temperature than what your hot side is. Why is that? It's because bearded dragons, just like Diego here and every other reptile, thermoregulate. What does that mean? That means they can't adjust their own body temperature like we can as humans. So if he gets a bit cold, he'll come over to the hot side. If he gets a bit hot, he'll go into the cold side, and so on and so on. It's the same for his UV lighting as well. Up there, we've got the Reptile Systems 25 Luminaire. Basically, that lighting unit allows us to basically add a sunrise, a sunset, and that higher midday UV output that they would naturally see in Australia. And as you can tell, he's climbed the log just there to get closer to the UV rays and get a good amount of UV.
These fall on Ferguson Zone 3 on the Ferguson scale. So if you go down the lines of Reptile Systems, your Ferguson Zone 3, it's nice and simple. Those UV lamps work absolutely perfect in here. If you go for any other companies or any other brand that hasn't quite caught up to the Ferguson scale sort of mentality yet, then your 12% will work perfectly fine in there. Providing it's 30 centimetres away from the animal's head, you're going to get a good UV rating. But allowing them a little bit of climbing apparatus so they can get closer to those UV lights or get closer to the heat if they so feel they need to is only beneficial for them. Basking lights, I've got 100 watts over there and it's rigged up to a dimming thermostat. That's why it's not on at full power right now, because the background is all polystyrene and it's all insulated really well. It really has insulated this enclosure, so the basking doesn't need to be on that much. It comes on in the morning, heats the enclosure up to the correct temperature and gives the great thermoregulation throughout the whole enclosure. It just works perfect for him. That's a 100 watt Reptile Systems bulb rigged up to a dimming thermostat with the probe directly in the middle of the enclosure, quite low down to where the bearded dragon would naturally be, because that's where we want the temperature to be recorded from. And we've got the 25 Luminaire UV lamp system in the middle. You never want to scrimp on your heating and lighting, because that's the most important thing to keep them alive, happy and comfortable.
But you've seen wood. The wood that he's stood on right now is beech wood. We found that in the forest. We basically left it inside the Reptibreeze, just drying out. You can see that's another project we've got going on at the moment. So if you want to see that project, make sure you hit subscribe. That's going to be a chameleon enclosure. But that's beechwood. We just left it to dry out for a good 6 months just to make sure nothing grew on it or anything like that. If you're going to do that, make sure you got a hardwood. And he absolutely loves it. He just climbs all the time. And I think that's a bamboo root there behind it. I don't know. That come with the reptile rescue that was Xena, which is currently... Where's Xena? Ah, she's there over the back. That came with her, so we sort of sanitised it. She didn't need it because she's got all that other wood in there, and we just used it in there. It gives him a great opportunity to be able to climb along that back wall. He can climb up here, he can get close to the UV rays, he can get away from the UV rays, he can hide underneath it. It's just natural, and it makes him a lot more comfortable. He does like to hide down there, and he does sleep over there. But why does he sleep over there? There's no UV over there. I got my solar meter out, put it in the back corner, clicked it. No UV at all. And that's because the UV finishes just there.
We're forever out collecting wood and logs and stuff like that from the forest and then just leaving it to dry out inside. There's other ways you can sanitise wood. You can stick it in the oven, you can boil it, you can stick it in the bath for a few days. There's so many ways you can actually do it. That's just the way I found works perfectly fine for my bigger pieces of wood that can't actually fit in the oven. I feel like bearded dragons are the most common pet reptile that there is out there. I always love the funny names that we give to our pet reptiles. Diego here, I have no idea how we actually gave him that name Diego. He just suited the name Diego, so we decided to give it. That's his name, that's his name. What do you call your bearded dragons and how old are they? I see a lot of babies out there at the moment. Let's get on to the controversial topic of substrate.
Because we do use a loose substrate, as you can tell. Now, the majority of the time, Diego here, yes, I'm talking about you, mate. I'm talking about you. He isn't actually on the floor a lot of the time. And as you can tell, there's not that much floor space that he can actually use in this enclosure. He's either up on that log, over that back log, up there, underneath there, or on his basking spot just there. But that substrate is a sand and soil mixture.
If you are going to use a loose substrate like I've got here, Don't put pictures on your Facebook groups, especially your bearded dragon Facebook groups. There's some people on those groups that I like to call Hitlers that would absolutely destroy you for not only using loose substrate, but they will try and find other problems. So just avoid the Facebook bearded dragon groups because they are very toxic. Use a fine topsoil and an extremely fine sand. So something like play sand is absolutely perfect. That's manufactured differently to your normal bricklaying sand, your builder's sand and stuff like that. The bricklaying sand's a lot more coarse and it can get stuck inside their stomachs. You want to use it extremely dry. You want to be able to grab the sand and it just to fall down. Inside a bearded dragon's stomach isn't wet, so it's not going to moisten up the sand, clump it up and block them. The only real time you see of blockages and impaction inside bearded dragons. Are you coming out, mate? What? Where are you going? Where are you going? The only time you really see problems inside your bearded dragon's stomach with impaction is one, with loose substrate but poor husbandry. The wrong temperatures, the wrong heating, the wrong lighting. If something's wrong in the enclosure, it can cause issues for your bearded dragon. So just make sure everything's spot on. And finally, stuff like your water bowls, your food bowls, you can get the little dollar ones, the £1 ones out of the little shop. Or you can go down the naturalistic line of something like these. They look a bit more natural. I actually picked these up from Cheshire Reptile Rescue. They're linked in the description down below. And they were dead cheap. They were a lot less than what they were actually going for in the shops. And they just work wow for this sort of things. With your water bowls, you don't want to make them so deep that they have potential to drown in there, but nice and big ones so they can actually get in there if they so feel the need to do so. They're absolutely perfect for snakes and all kinds as well. The biggest tip when it does come to water bowls, because these can be a problem for bearded dragons, especially in small enclosures, always put them over the cold side of the enclosure. If they're over the hot side of the enclosure, it's going to evaporate the water so much quicker. It's going to cause high humidity inside your enclosure, and it's going to cause respiratory issues and diseases within your bearded dragon, and you don't want that. Keep a very close eye on your humidity. Some people don't have water bowls in their enclosures at all. It just makes sure like the vegetables and the food that the animals actually get is moist, so it adds a bit of moisture into their system, and that their live food is extremely gut loaded, highly gut loaded. With something like the Reptile System's insect food is going to help add the moisture into the live food, giving your bearded dragon nice moisture. Some people do it that way, some people do it this way. See what you decide to do. If you do find out that you want to keep a water bowl in there, but your humidity is that little bit higher, you can always add in extra ventilation onto the sides just to help that air circulation go through the enclosure. What are you doing, mate? That's going to help your humidity drop in the enclosure, keeping the humidity perfect for these amazing species.
So from me and Diego, that's the video. If you've enjoyed it, hit the thumbs up button. Peace out, guys.